Thank you. Now, I nicknamed her. Did you know that?
Yes,
I nicknamed her Matilda. So thank you, Matilda, for alerting us to the fact that you are recording us and that we are ready to start. Disciples making disciples is what we're going to be discussing Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. And when we get through, we will have 12 hours of discussion under that particular heading, disciples making disciples. Here's what we hope to do tonight. We want to start about right now, 6 o'clock. Just a minute, we'll have a prayer and 15 off in our study. We'll go to about 6:45. I've got my watch set for 6:40. For 6:45, we'll pause. We'll have some snacks or some eats like we usually do. We'll break for about 30 minutes for those snacks and just enjoy each other's fellowship. At 7:15, we'll come back and study some more for another 45 minutes. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll break again, this time for only about 15 minutes. And then we'll come back and we will, let's see, 7:15 to 8. At 8:15, we'll pick back up. And for the last 45 minutes, we'll continue our study and be finished at 9 o'clock. So from 6 to 9, we'll be here about 3 hours, but we'll intersperse some breaks along the way to keep us fresh. Let's pause for a word of prayer, then we'll get started. Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for our Savior Jesus. We are delighted that we get to open up the Bible and read about him everywhere we turn. We're thankful that as we're reading through the Old Testament, our appetites are whetted and we're excited and we look forward to continue to read and see the Messiah that you promised. When we start with the New Testament, here he comes. And it's just wonderful to watch him come into the world, be born as a little baby, living his life as a young man, stepping into the public sector as a minister, a preacher, and to watch him interact with people, invest in people's lives, and live his life so wonderful. We love our Savior Jesus. We can't talk about him enough. We can't be grateful for him enough. And we're thankful that he has not only given us a great example by which to live, but has also given us a tremendous challenge. We're going to think about that challenge in our studies tonight, as you know, Father, and help us to open up our minds and our hearts to perhaps some fresh ideas that we've not thought about before. And not only think about these things, but even apply them to life and just totally transform ourselves. And the whole way we approach Christianity and the whole way we approach propagating the gospel and growing the church, just by changing the way we think about the purpose, the rather the challenge that Jesus has given us. Disciples making disciples. We love you, Father. Thank you for loving us to send Jesus to die for us, to live for us. And I'll be with you and talk about us. He said, man, in his name that we pray. Amen. Yeah. So if I say disciples, come on in. How are y'all doing? Come right on in, find you a spot, sit back there. I can't see you. That may be a good thing. I can't pick at you. That will really be a big thing. And come right in and find you a place even up front if you wish. If I say disciples making disciples, where does your mind go in the Bible? There's probably a verse of the Bible to which your mind goes automatically. Disciples making disciples. The ideas? In Matthew 28, of course. So let's all go to Matthew chapter 28. And we'll begin with verse 18. And we will go through verse 20. We find ourselves, of course, in what is frequently called what? The Great Commission. This is Matthew's account of the Great Commission. In Mark's account, it's in Mark 16. In Luke's account, it is in Luke 24. It is not found in the book of John. And so Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20 is going to be the springboard for our entire series. I want to pause before we read the passage, and I want to give you a homework assignment. Not hard at all. But I want you to think. That might be hard. Okay? How many times now you go home? Maybe you have Bible software programs on your computers, your iOS devices. Maybe you don't. You have concordances at home. Go home and see how many times you find the word evangelize in the New Testament. Evangelize. In addition to that, I want you to look and see how many times you find the word evangelism. So hunt for those words. One more. See how many times you will find the word evangelist. Okay? Evangelize, evangelism, and evangelist. That is an important homework assignment. Because we have personal evangelism seminars. Some larger congregations with multiple staff arrangements have personal evangelists on their staff. Preachers of personal evangelism. We will launch personal evangelism campaigns. And all of these are great works that we don't want to minimize at all. But I want you to filter all of those great works and all of what we try to do in those great works, filter all of that through the answer to your three questions. How many times is evangelize? How many times is evangelism? How many times is evangelist found in the New Testament? We'll pick up tomorrow night, and before we even get started, we'll see how we did on our homework assignment. If you come and you haven't done it, automatically you get an F. And you can build up from an F to maybe getting a B- in the class. You just ask these three ladies. They've been studying together with us all week. And then they went from an F up to a B-, and the way they misbehaved, they went back down to an F and back up to a C+, and then back down to an F and up to a C-, and back down to an F. And I said, y'all are just totally incorrigible, and that's where they stayed. F for having fun with me, right? At each other's expense. So that's our homework assignment that we will give our attention to first thing tomorrow night. By means of introduction, when I was in the 3rd grade, that was, as you can tell, a long time ago. My daddy moved his young family to Houston, Texas. And Daddy began to preach for the McGregor Park Church of Christ. Big church there in Houston. Big church building, big old steeple. We saw them finish the church building, put that steeple up, bore to the eyes of a little boy. That was something to see. How many have heard of the Jewel Miller film strips? How many have used them? Great. Isn't it a great tool? It really is helpful. The associate minister with my father at McGregor Park Church of Christ was a man named Jewel Miller. Means I grew up playing with his children. I broke my foot on a tire swing in his backyard. Jewel Miller. I would play in summer in the church building, and I'd run up and down the halls of those Bible classrooms and Bible class wings, and I would look in that Bible class, and in that Bible class was Brother Joe Miller. And he was actually creating the Joe Miller Constitution. I witnessed those become a reality. I saw those in the making. That was a long time ago. We have used tools like Joe Miller film strips, 30 minutes with someone who loves you, J. Sidwell Baxter, Open Bible Study, Ivan Stewart. Now, these are great, successful tools. But in my personal assessment, I'll say it again, in my personal assessment, we are no better off reaching the lost today than we were 50 years ago without those tools. In fact, 50 years ago, before those tools, we were more effective reaching the lost because we were willing to talk about our convictions. We were more willing to debate our positions with others that believed and held to other positions. And you heard it said in the 1950s, I've never studied the data, but in the 1950s, the Church of the Christ were one of the fastest growing religions in America. Not so today. And so here we are, 50 years later, and we are not as productive in reaching the lost than we were 50 years ago, despite all of the tools that have been made available to us. And I'm wondering why. I want to hear your thoughts. Why do you think that's the case? There's no right and wrong answer. I just want to hear your thoughts.
We may count too much on technology.
We perhaps rely too much on technology. That may be true.
I wonder about the use of tools. How convicted are we that God's ability is?
How convicted are we that we really have the truth?
The conviction of actually teaching others. We're really convinced that people are lost. And
Okay. Do we really believe that people are lost? Or
should not tools. And then distracted from real understanding that people are lost.
Okay. And that may be true. We're not as concerned. Perhaps we don't believe that people are really lost without the gospel. So, yes, sir.
But Ray Duncan always said, know your Bible. We don't know our Bible. We don't have it.
No,
We don't.
Ray Duncan. I have that name and Coons age.
One reason why I'm here, Ray Duncan. Big.
Really? Is he still alive?
No sense.
I did not know that. I did.
He is not.
Beg pardon?
He's not.
He's not. I don't believe. Wow. People don't know their Bibles. That's very true. You don't know the Bible enough to share it, huh?
We don't have that burning. A lot of us don't have that burning. I mean, we don't. It's so many people to talk to. You know,
Yeah.
and we need that. We need more of us to have that burning,
Burning to share.
that burning desire.
Yeah. Word like Jeremiah.
Mhm.
Your words burning in me. I just don't want to talk about it anymore. It's causing me too much trouble. But when I try to shut up, it just burns on me every time.
Got to feel guilty. I feel guilty if I don't have stuff with me to give them.
Okay.
You know, to handle. So I looked in my car yesterday in the parking lot at the store where William doesn't want me to go to.
Yes. William, I have a Jocelyn living in my house. I understand.
It's a nice place. It's
So do you carry things in your car to
Yeah.
share with them? Like
in my
little
pocketbook,
tracts? Uh-huh.
and I didn't have anything. I'm like, man. And so I looked in the trunk, and then I looked in the back seat. there was a house to house.
Oh, good.
See,
Good.
the person told me they're looking for a church.
There you go. You never know, do you?
No,
So you can have multiple copies of House to House. You can have Alan Webster's tracts that he's written here of late. There are other tracts that have been around a lot longer than even Alan's that are a little smaller that you can share. Carry tracts with you. That's a great idea. But we don't have that burning. Someone else has a thing. Yes, sir.
Got kids alongside of them, forgotten. Depth of the grace of God that reached down to our bankrupt spiritual soul and set us free.
We have forgotten what the gospel means to us. Whoa, what a thought. How true. I mean, the grace of God has lifted us up, hasn't it? And we just kind of take that for granted, perhaps. We've been Christians so long. I mean, I've been a Christian almost 60 years. And, you know, keep the fervor going that long, I understand. I agree. Yes, ma'am. Does somebody here have them? Hand up. Yeah, I'm going to give you my theory. And that's what this series of studies is going to rest on. I believe that we are not as effective reaching the lost because we're going about it the wrong way. We're doing the wrong things. These are great tools that we're using, and we need to keep using them. Doing our film strips, 30 minutes for someone who loves me, loves you, Road to Romans, open Bible study, whatever you have chosen to use. Keep using them. But I believe we have approached this concept, subject, this challenge all along. We go to personal evangelism workshops. We beat ourselves up because we don't do it. We leave. We go to the next one. We feel guilty and beat ourselves up for not doing it. We leave, and it is an endless circle. We hear what we should be doing. We feel guilty because we're not doing, and we go back and we hear what we're not doing, and we feel guilty about what we're not doing, and we make zero increase, or if any, they're minuscule. I'm to preach in a conference coming up in the future. Won't tell you where, won't tell you what, but it is a conference that focuses on the subject of winning the lost. It was created with that emphasis, which is great, by the way. But I'm going to ask those that are in my first class, how many were there last year? From the several hands who go up. And we studied about reaching the lost last year. That's what this was all about. Amen. And hands are going to go up. I'm going to ask them, how many of you since last year have spoken to at least 5 people about Jesus and tried to win them to the Lord? How many have you led to Jesus since last year? I know I'm going to find. Very few. And I'm not saying that to spank us. I'm just saying that it illustrates we're not doing this right. So I'm going to give you the genesis or the origin of this entire train of thought. And then we're going to dive into Matthew 28 and let it give the springboard for the night and for the rest of the series. Here is the genesis or the origin of this way of thinking and our use of Matthew 28. It was about 2 years ago that our eldership at the Spring Meadows Church of Christ in Springfield, Tennessee, Greater Nashville, had one of their off-site meetings. William, Dave, an off-site meeting is where the elders and staff meet away from the church building. Sometimes we've gone to the house of an elder and had breakfast together. Sometimes we've gone to a place of business with beautiful woods where one of the elders works and just camped out in their conference room. Sometimes one a year, there are 4 of them, 1 a quarter, one of the off-site meetings every year, we get together and we don't have a meeting, we just go play. We just go play. We go and we've gone all the way from Nashville to Huntsville, Alabama, and played top dog. But what does that do? It just strengthens the bond among us as brethren. I mean, I'll go to the jumping off spot for my eldership. They didn't do anything for me, and I'm just a part-time staff member. I'm telling you, they would take a bullet for our preachers and others that are working on staff. We're tight. So we go there, we play top dog. By the way, our youth minister is 63, one of the best in the brotherhood, and the 63 youth minister and the 71-year-old part-time associate minister put the fire out of all of those guys. It's not wrong. I just had to put that in. So anyway, we were on one of these off-site meetings, and it was where we meet together, and we meet all morning Saturday. We start early in the morning, and we go all the way till noon, talking about the church, the future of the church, making plans, dreaming. Then we eat together. We're not finished. Boom, we come back and finish, and then we have the rest of the afternoon as individuals. In one of those off-site meetings, they brought up the data, the spreadsheet, and they have several given arenas of emphasis that are matters of their concern as leaders. And they see, okay, in this area, are we trending upward or downward, or are we status quo? And trending one way or the other, would you give it a green or a yellow or a red? Green means all systems go, we're working on it, we're looking pretty good. Red, this thing is on life support. And we were in that section of the meeting, and we were talking about winning the loss. And they said, we need to do this better. And they talked about this. This was the eldership. And so they decided they wanted to change the moniker or the motto under which they marched, the moniker by which they were to be known, and the moniker by which all the congregation is to know themselves. And they came up with these words. From now on, we want to be known, and we want to know ourselves as disciples making disciples. You see, those aren't my words. Those are the words of our eldership. And so that was earlier in the year. We were in a preacher change because our preacher, after 16 years, decided to go into a different ministry with his brother and help preachers, doing a great work, by the way. We found a new preacher. He was there in the meeting. We were excited about his coming. He's doing an outstanding job, and we love him to death. But they commissioned me and the new preacher to start thinking about the lessons we need to teach to help us shift our gears to being disciples making disciples. And so it was in the spring, and I was thinking about that assignment. And I went to Matthew 28. Because I knew that's what those words, where those words were found. So I want you to read with me Matthew 28, 18 through 20. And I'm going to tell you what I found and the difference that it made in my life. And the change that it has made and is making in a congregation building. Jesus came and said to them, English Standard Version, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore, and here it is, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age or the world. So Dave, help me do a deep dive. Do you have your text there, your original? How many imperatives? Now, an imperative verb is a verb that commands. It is imperative that, it is essential that, command. How many imperatives are found in Matthew 28, verse 19?
I think it's only make disciples.
Only one. Only one command. And the command is make disciples. Now, usually when you say, what is Jesus commanding us to do in Matthew 28, verse 19, they say, he's commanding us to go. That's not what he's commanding us to do. He's commanding us to Mathatusate, make disciples. Yes, ma'am.
Who wrote the book, Go Ye means go me?
That was Ivan Stewart. And Ivan Stewart wrote the book Go Ye means go me as a workbook leading you through, teaching you how to use his open Bible study, which is superb, by the way. It'll lead people to Jesus. So only one command in Matthew 28:19, make disciples. Now here's a little nuance. In the Greek language, not to be technical, but it is important. When you have a participle, that's a figure of speech you remember from high school grammar, you know, that one you slept through. A participle, figure of speech, in the Greek language, when you have a participle next to a verb, the participle takes on the flavor of the verb. There are 3 participles. They're called modal participles, participles that tell you how to do what you're commanded to do. These 3 modal participles take on the emphasis of something necessary, essential. It is imperative that we make disciples, and here's how you do it. It is necessary that you do 1, necessary that you do 2, necessary that you do 3. Guess what the participles are? What's the first one, Dave? Go. So you see, before I can make a disciple, I have to, it's necessary for me to go. We don't always do that. We build our multi-million-dollar buildings, and we will put out our marquee signs, and we'll even invest in a newspaper article where we invite people to come be part of us. And we might even go out sometimes, if we really are industrious, we'll put flyers on doors in certain neighborhoods. But outside of that, we don't go. We expect them to come. And we wonder, well, why are we going to church? We're not growing because we're not going. You must invest in relationships to make this happen. Go doesn't mean knock on a door cold turkey. You watch Jesus working with people. He invested in them. He invested in the apostles, of course. He invested in Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, of course. He invested in people, but they came to Jesus. Luke chapter 15, I think it's Luke chapter 6. They came to Jesus to hear him and be healed of him. They didn't come just to be healed, they came to hear. And Jesus, first of all, healed them. He invested in their lives. Then he gave them something to hear. So you have to invest in people's lives. You have something great going on Monday whenever they come in here needing some food. You give them food, you give them a tract, you send them out the back door, or the front door, whatever it is. Do you ever invest in their lives? That's the first essential. Go make disciples, and to make that happen, it is necessary that you invest in people's lives. Start building relationships. It was poo-pooed all over years ago when people started talking about friendship evangelism. That's exactly the way you get it done. What's the second participle? Baptizing. Yes, baptizing. Which means you don't become a disciple until you are baptized. Big observation, isn't it, in today's religious climate? I see people come on the television all the time, even some that are very highly recognizable, others that are from California, and they'll have a Bible in their hand, open or closed, and they will tell you if you will just pray this prayer, and they'll give you the prayer to pray. And if you pray that prayer, you are saved. By the way, make a telephone call to this number, and we'll talk to you a little bit more. Just pray a prayer, and that's all it takes to become a disciple of Jesus, to be saved. You're not a disciple of Jesus until you're baptized the way the Bible teaches. We just spent some time there, but we are looking at a different emphasis for our discussion. So remind yourself that baptism, Bible baptism, there's only one. 7 are mentioned, but there's one God, one Spirit. There's one body and one Spirit, even as you're called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. One God, Father of all. Ephesians 4:4-6. God recognizes only one of the 7 baptisms mentioned in the New Testament. You read through the book of Acts and you will see it's an immersion. You will see it as an immersion in water. You will see that it is an immersion in water predicated upon faith in Jesus and changing the way one thinks, even if it means changing one's religion, repentance. And it is an immersion in water predicated upon faith in Jesus and repentance for the forgiveness of sins. That's the baptism of the New Testament. The one baptism God recognizes, accepts today. And the baptism that is essential to, necessary for us to make someone a disciple. The command is to make disciples. The modal participles are, first of all, to do that, it's necessary that you go. Invest yourself in the lives of people. It's necessary that you baptize these folks with Bible baptism. What is the third participle? Teaching. Teaching what? Teaching all things what? Do what? All things that Christ has what?
Commanded.
All right. Okay. You did what I thought you were going to do. You did what I did 50 years. Teaching then to observe. Now that's the third participle. Yes, to make a disciple, you have to go. It's necessary that you go invest in people's lives. It's necessary that you baptize them with the one Bible baptism. And it's necessary that you teach them. Teach them what? Teach them what Jesus what? Observe all that I have commanded you. Amen. Elon taught him, remember that one? You gotta be a certain age to remember that one, right? Teaching them to observe all things that I, past, present, or future, have commanded. Past. Johnny, I read it, I preached it, I quoted it forever, and I didn't see it until last summer. Jesus said, I used to believe this. You go, you're baptized, then you take those people that you baptized and teach them the rest of the Lord's New Testament so that they can grow as Christians. That's the way I understood that. Anybody else like that? But that's not what Jesus said. The rest of the New Testament hadn't even been made available. And he said, you go make disciples, teaching them to observe all that I have past tense commanded you. You teach them to obey all that I have already been talking about. Commanded in reference to what?
Go make disciples.
Making
Baptize.
disciples. When I read that, I thought, well, okay. What did Jesus say about discipleship? What? No. In the Gospels, red letters, Jesus' words. If you twice, there are two verses that say, go to this gentleman, this man, tell him the Lord and his disciples have need of this room for the regular Passover. There are only 9 verses with 1 or 2 parallel accounts where Jesus used the word disciple. I couldn't believe it. Here's how you make a disciple. You go invest in people's lives. You baptize those with the one baptism that you have invested in, talk to them. Then you teach them what I mean when I use the word disciple. And he only used it 9 times. That's where we're going to be in our study. And I believe that this will transform us. And I believe that this will transform our efforts in reaching the lost if we will just put it to practice. There are 3 of the 9 in Matthew, 3 of the 9 in Luke, 3 of the 9 in John. You never have Jesus using the word disciple in the book of Mark. The 3 passages in Matthew where Jesus used the word disciple are all found in the same chapter. And they teach us how to make a disciple of ourselves. The 3 that you find in the book of Luke are all found in the same chapter. And they teach us what it takes to remain a disciple. The 3 that you find in John are in 3 different chapters, and they tell us how to spot a fake disciple. And that's where we're going to be in our studies. For the rest of our time tonight, we're going to take this, go invest in people's lives, baptize with one Bible baptism, those that you invested in, teach them what Jesus meant when he used the word disciple. And that's how you make a disciple. That's how you make a disciple. So for the rest of our study tonight, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 10. Tomorrow, we're going to be in Luke chapter 14. Saturday, we're going to be in John chapters 8, 13, and 15. How to make a disciple of ourselves, what it takes to remain a disciple as ourselves, and how to start a faith disciple is where we're going to be. It is 6:45, and I made a promise. And I'm telling you, you would throw tomatoes if I didn't keep my word. I know these three ladies, I've been studying with them for 2 weeks. They don't throw tomatoes, but they look mean at you. See right there? Let's pause, we'll take about a 30-minute break and enjoy some refreshments together. And then we'll come back at 7:15 and we'll get going. While they're putting some things together, maybe you have a question or a suggestion. Yes.
Question. Matthew 28, some of the verbiage that's used in the Greek, the language, the mood, the tenses, etc., might possibly be better interpreted as you go.
As you go.
Which have you found from your studies? Not one makes a difference over the other, but as you go is more of a lifestyle. It's in your everyday walk. This is what you're doing kind of constantly. Which have you found or have you looked at?
I think as you go takes away from the emphasis of it is necessary. It suggests that as you go suggests you're going to be one who is going. Since it is a participle that is attached to an imperative verb, it is a participle that says it is necessary, as is the participle baptizo in participle, as is the participle teaching. So I think, personally, I think it takes away from the emphatic. It's necessary that you go to make disciples. Somebody, that's a great question. Someone else, help us. John, you had your hand up, didn't you?
I had my word. I was going to ask you if 9 times just Jews. You already asked that.
Yes.
But it is. That's a question.
Oh, yes. The word disciple is found all over the place in the Gospels. It's found often in the book of Acts. It is never used after Acts. Wonder why?
Would make disciples.
You know what?
But it would make disciples.
Well, my suggestion is we've already become what we're supposed to be, and now the rest of the New Testament is helping to make us better. Do what? It's written to disciples. Yes, yes. Like somebody said years ago, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are written to convince. Acts is written to convert. The Romans through Jude is written to construct. Revelation is written to comfort. By the way, that's a pretty good 4-point sermon, isn't it? They all start with C, so you can preach it. You know, preaching got to start, have every point start with the same letter, or they have to rhyme. You get two if they rhyme. Right?
But then too, the only people who
You
can make
get
a
your pride.
disciple is
Ma'am?
the only people who can make a disciple is a disciple.
Well, see, this was my point, Sherry. I looked at this. I read this passage, and I knew what the elders were commissioning us to do. I went to the elders meeting on Wednesday night, and I said, guys, you want us to create a series of lessons for the fall quarter on how to make disciples. And I said, I told them this. I said, we can't make what we are not ourselves. And you're going to find that these 9 passages are going to make you extremely uncomfortable. You're gonna find ways, as am I, you need to grow. I take this entire series and put it under this umbrella. The elders, I put it under this umbrella. Refine the paradigm. Change the way you think about this. Change it. Change it. There's a saying, the same old will get you what? We've been doing the same old for 50 years, and guess what it's gotten us? The same old. You want to make a difference? You got to be different. Amen? Without compromising anything. You want to make a difference? You've got to be different. And that's what we're going to try to deal with tonight, Friday night, and Saturday. Are we not ready? Ready. We're ready? Okay. Let's pause for a word of prayer and thank the Lord for our good snack coming up. Russ, how about these? Welcome back. So what we're doing is we are focusing on the charge of Jesus in Matthew 28, which said, go, make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things whatever I have commanded, past tense you. And lo, I'm with you always, even until the end of the age. So when you look at that, you have the command to make disciples, and then you have I invest in people's lives. Go. You have I immerse people with the one baptism, baptize. You have I instruct people what it means to be a disciple, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. There's a good 3-point sermon. And again, they all start with the same letter. Invest, immerse, instruct. And that's a way to look at Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Again, Jesus said, teach them to observe all things that I have, past tense, commanded you. And so we're looking at what Jesus commanded, specifically, personally, what Jesus commanded relative to being a disciple. Another way to put that, we want to see what Jesus meant when he used the word disciple. If I ask you, what is a disciple? What would you say? A follower? A learner? Exactly. Those are the two answers that we get, and they are accurate relative to the meaning of mopses, the noun that is translated disciple. But how did Jesus use that word? What did he mean when he said disciple? Let's turn to Matthew chapter 10. As I referenced, there are 9 times Jesus used the word disciple to help us know what he meant by that word. 3 in Matthew, 3 in Luke, 3 in John. And as you look to these 9, there are 1 or 2 parallel passages that network into those 9. But when you study the red letters of your New Testament and the Gospels, you will find the word disciple used only in an economy of ways. So let's look at the 3 times Jesus used the word and see what he meant by that word in our study tonight. Matthew chapter 10, verse 24. A disciple is not above his what? Teacher, nor a servant above his master. A disciple is not above his teacher. A disciple doesn't tell the teacher what to think or do. The teacher tells the disciple what to think or do. The teacher doesn't listen to the disciple as one with authority. The disciple listens to the teacher as one with authority. So in the first place, from Matthew chapter 18, we look at verse 24. A disciple listens. What do I have? Matthew 10. I am so sorry. Matthew 10. Put it there. They thought so highly of me, they didn't give me an eraser.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did. Thank you.
Just didn't tell you where it was.
They thought more highly of me than they should, that's for sure. Thank you. Matthew 10. A disciple is someone who listens to Jesus. How did he use that word? He used that word in reference to people who are going to hear what he says. People who are going to hear what he says. Now go back to verse 18 of Matthew 28. All what has been given to me? Authority. The word that is translated is exousia. E-X-O-U-S-I-A. Means nothing to us other than the emphasis of the word, exousia. That word is a word for authority that means the right to tell you what to do and the right to tell you what not to do. So in Matthew 28:18, Jesus said, I have been given the right to tell you how to behave. I have been given the right to tell you what to believe. I have been given the right to tell you what to be. I have been given the right to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. All exousia has been given unto me where? In heaven and on earth. There's one place Jesus does not have authority. Where is that? Hades. Exactly. And who's in charge there? Satan, the prince of demons. He has authority over what's going to happen to Hades, but not authority in Hades. All authority in heaven and on earth. So take that, all authority in heaven, to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 22. Angels, principalities and authorities being made subject to him. Angels are subject to Jesus. You remember about 3 years ago in our series, we studied on angels? And in that study, we learned that angels are dispatched into the unseen realm of providence to serve New Testament Christians who are going to heaven. Hebrews 1:14. The one who dispatches them is Jesus. I pray to God, Jesus is my intercessor, sitting right next to God, and then he's the one that turns and dispatches angels into the unseen realm of providence to care for my needs in response to my prayers. Now, how beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? It's true because he has been given all authority in heaven, but also on earth. And that being true, Jesus says, a disciple is someone who listens to me. I have the right to tell you what to do and not do, and a disciple is somebody that listens to me telling them what to do or what not to do. Turn with me, if you would, to Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3, and then we're going to go to a passage that teaches us how to listen. Let's look at verses 15 and 16 of Colossians 3. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another. Connect the two words, rule and word. That's how Jesus rules. He rules through his word dwelling in us. So let's spend some time with another chapter in Matthew, teaching us how to better listen to Jesus. How to better listen to Jesus. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 13. The parable of the sower. Now, in the parable of the sower, I'm going to read verses 1 through 23. If you like to mark in your Bibles, circle or underline the word here. Okay? The same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. A great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd, that sound better? I'm so sorry I forgot to turn that on. I got so excited about y'all eating that cheesecake in front of me, I just turned on the microphone. And he told them many things in parables, saying, here we go. A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him mark it. Hear. The disciples came to him and said to him, why do you speak to them in parable stories? He answered them, to you, it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. Reveal. But to them it has not been given. Conceal. Jesus spoke in parables to reveal truth to the open-minded and conceal truths from the closed-minded. If you paused and went down to verse 34 and 35, all these things Jesus said to the crowds in parables indeed. He said nothing to them without a parable. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. And then Psalm 78 verse 2 is cited. Jesus spoke in stories, parables, to reveal, to conceal, and to fulfill. That's why he spoke in parables. Verse 11 of the chapter says, he answered them, or verse 12, for to you, or for to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and mark it, hearing they do not mark it, hear, nor do they understand. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that says, you will indeed mark it, hear, but never understand. And you will indeed see, but not perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely mark it, hear, and their eyes they have closed. Thus they should see with their eyes and mark it, hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, in your ears, for they mark it, hear, For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see and did not see it, and to underline it here, what you underline it here, and did not underline it, hear it. Verse 18, underline it again, here, then the parable of the sower. When anyone underlines it, hears the word of the kingdom, and does not understand it, the evil one comes, snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path wayside. As for what was sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who, mark it, hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what is sown among thorns, this is one who, mark it, hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unprofitable. As for what was sown on good soil, this is one who, mark it, hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. Let's count them now. Count them, mark the ones you underlined or circled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I counted 16. Did y'all count that many? I counted 16 in my translation, at least. If you were to place Matthew 13 and Luke chapter 8 together, you will find almost 40 times. If you take the parallel accounts, you will find almost 40 times some derivative of the word here. The parable of the sower, simply put, is not about different kinds of soil. It's not even about different kinds of hearts. It's about different ways people listen to God. How people hear what God says in Scripture. Here are the 4 different ways. Number 1, with some, there is no reception because of prejudice. No reception because of prejudice. Wayside soil, hard soil, seed lands on top, doesn't penetrate, no reception. And in the context, he's talking about individuals who refuse to see, hear, understand, come to him. He's talking about the heart hardened by prejudice. No reception because of prejudice. Sometimes we want to make a disciple out of someone, but we can't because they have been prejudiced against the truth. I remember, I'll call him James. James grew up in a denomination. This is true story. James began to date a young lady that belonged to the Lord's people, member of the Lord's church. And so to kind of fan the flame, he decided to go to church with this young lady. And he went to church on Wednesday night, and they opened up Acts chapter 2, verse 38. The denomination that he went to didn't believe in the teachings, the complete teachings of Acts 2:38. They minimized baptism. So the preacher got up, or the teacher, and he was talking, he that repent and be baptized, every one of you in the name of Jesus Christ, for the remission of your sins, and you'll receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. And James says, that's not in my Bible. That's not in my Bible. He was not raised hearing that. He wouldn't hear for it. That's not in my Bible. He went home and picked up his Bible. Guess what he found? And guess what happened? He was converted to Jesus. by that sweet young lady. They married, and he became a gospel preacher. But initially, he was prejudiced to the truth. That's not in my Bible. How many times have you heard it said? You're the people that don't believe in music in church.
Uh-huh.
How many times have you heard it said, oh yeah, y'all think y'all the only ones? How does that go?
On they have.
And they immediately put up a brick wall and won't let you go any further. The church, right? No reception, prejudice. Some people listen to the Bible that way or fail to listen to the Bible that way. And guess what? They can go to church all their lives. They never, ever, ever will be a disciple in keeping with the way Jesus used that word. Because a disciple listens to the teacher. And they can. No reception, no prejudice. Second way people listen. No root. The word is heard, but it doesn't get in and stick. No root. Because of pressure. So here's this rocky ground. People receive the word with joy. Man, this is good stuff. Where has this been all of my life? Where have you been all of my life? You people saved my life. I've heard that before by an individual that came and wrote on a card and then left the Lord's people never to be seen anything. So this is the next best thing since white bread. I've never heard it before. That's what people used to say when they had to take biscuits to school every day. They wanted white bread. Now they want to take biscuits and ham every day, right? History repeats. So they hear the word with joy, and yet it doesn't penetrate deep. No roots, no deep convictions. And as a result, tribulation, problems, and persecution arise, read it, on account of the word. Immediately falls away. They accept it, they're excited about it, they share what they learn, and automatically they get pushback. Automatically they lose friends. Automatically they're ostracized from family. Because of the word, they readily accept it. And as a result, no more word, no roots, because of pressure. The third way people listen to the Bible, to Jesus. No retention. No retention. They hear it, they get it, they're happy about it, but they don't hold on to it for a certain reason. It says they get it, but it's choked away by the cares of the world, the riches of the world. Luke's account adds the pleasures of the world. So you'll have someone become a New Testament Christian and a follower of Jesus, but then they start having some problems in their family, in their life. And because they have problems in their life, where's God? Where's Jesus as my shepherd? If God loves me, why is he letting this happen to me? If God can do something about it, why doesn't he? And they lose their faith in God or in Jesus. And because of the cares of the world, they don't retain the word. There are others that come into money. And we'll see, honey. I mean, I've known preachers who've lost their marriages because their spouse came into money and said, we will see now. Jesus said it's hard for a rich man to go where? to go to heaven. And so the word is received, but then wait a minute. The word teaches me to do what with my money? And then you start hitting the man's pocketbook and you don't find out what he's made out of. No retention. And then receive the word, become a New Testament Christian, and then a bad decision is made. And one begins to get involved with someone that's not his or her husband. A marriage fails. A brother or sister falls. The word is thrown away. Or the word is kept and twisted into something that's not the word. And Jesus isn't listened to. One listens to themselves and says, it's okay. And then make the Bible say what they want it to say. Am I connecting here? I mean, have you had those experiences like I have? And so there's no retention. You don't keep it because of pleasure, because of problems, or because of plenty, wealth. Worry, wealth, wantonness, however you want to say it, no retention. The last way that people listen to the Bible is summed up with the word, followed by an exclamation mark, results. Good soil. Here's the word, understands it, bears fruit, yields 100-fold, 60, 30, depending on the individual, his or her skill sets. Results. Because they are productive. Did you see what we did there? Johnny, did you see that? R, no reception. R, no roots. R, no retention. R, results. You can call this sermon, I would suggest you do that. And it's all because of P, prejudice, P, pressure, P, pleasure, problems plenty, or P, productivity. There are 4 different ways to listen to Jesus, and only 25% is accurate. You know what that tells me? When I try to make disciples out of people, it's going to be kind of hard. I'm going to meet resistance for one reason or another, as suggested by this parable. So making disciples is not just something that hey, here's the magic words, bibbidi bobbidi boom, boom, there they are. You invest, you immerse, then you instruct. This is what Jesus means by that word. You must listen to Him and let Him tell you what you do and what you don't do. And of course, the rest of the New Testament is as much the word of Jesus as is what He said in the Gospels. Thus Colossians 3 tells us, let the word of Christ dwell in you. So we are to listen to Jesus. When, this little sidebar question, to underscore what we've been saying, when was Jesus given all of this authority? When did He become someone that everybody should listen to? Any ideas?
Well,
What do you say?
That's it, very beginning.
What do you get?
At the beginning?
well, also, when he was just 12, he was teaching in the temple.
Listening, learning, teaching, answering questions, amazed them with his understanding.
Baptism,
At his baptism, he was given some authority at his baptism. What?
My
Acts
beloved
10:38
son.
says, he was anointed of God. See.
He said, "This is my beloved son."
What?
It's not about the
Hear ye him, that's at the transfiguration.
To end him and
Here,
well, please.
here, I'm sorry, Sharon, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And that's well, when he was baptized, said, "This is my beloved son, hear ye him."
Hear ye, well,
Oh, is it?
he
Well,
said that at the transfiguration.
Oh, okay.
Hear ye him.
I got it back. Okay.
oh my, well, please.
So he went about doing good, healing all who were oppressed of the devil. God be with him, follows the fact that he was anointed by God. So he was given some authority, the authority to perform miracles. Acts 2 tells us God confirmed him as his son by these miracles.
He was tempted by the devil, and he was given authority then.
When?
After he was tempted by the devil.
When he was tempted by the devil.
The devil's temptation.
Let's give you another verse. And all of these can fit into the scenario, but I want to suggest this is the key passage to answer our question. Turn to Ephesians chapter 1. Ephesians chapter 1, and let's read verses 20 through 22. He's talking about God, how he worked in Christ when he raised him from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion and above every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the one to come. And he put, at that time, when he put him at his right hand, he put all things under his feet and gave him as head over all things to the church, which is his body, the fullness of him that fills all in all. Verse 21 says he was put there at the right hand of God, far above all rule and authority. And then verse 22 says, put all things under his feet. Head over all things to the church. I would suggest that Jesus was given authority when he was baptized and at that moment anointed with the Holy Spirit, the authority to perform miracles. He had never performed one before then. I would suggest that as he comes down from the Mount of Transfiguration, he had authority and that he spoke a word that was not his, and therefore God said, you listen to him, not Moses and Elijah. But being put far means way above. Being put far above all rule and far above any and all authority happened when God seated him at his right side. Thus, all authority has been given to me. Jesus knew exactly where he was going the very day he said that. And that's when the authority was given to him. Food for thought. So did Jesus take his seat there, or was he given a seat there? He was given it. He was given a seat. You come sit right here. This is where you belong. That's what God the Father did to Jesus. He seated Jesus at his right side. That's your right. You do not let him force at your living. It's your right. You come sit right here. This is where you belong. And he gave them all one. We listen to him as disciples. Now, as elders in the church, you teach brethren, we listen to Jesus. Jesus is the one who dictates how we live and how we're going to behave and what we're going to be and what we're going to believe. When it comes to how you worship, how you interact and worship, before, after worship, how you try to influence others, Jesus and his word makes the determination. When we get that across to our brethren, tradition becomes less powerful. Personal preference becomes inconsequential. What I think doesn't even get in the front door because we live by what Jesus says. That's a disciple. Yes, ma'am.
Question, I'm not sure I'm following you. When you went to, are you suggesting that all authority was not given to Christ until he ascended to heaven?
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That is what I'm suggesting.
Then how does that coincide with Matthew? Because he had not ascended at that point, but yet he said all authority.
It's a wonderful question. What I'm suggesting is Jesus is making that statement knowing that very day. In fact, just moments after he makes this statement, he's going to be in heaven, sitting right next to God. So he can say that knowing this is going to be mine. This is mine. I have been given this. That's why I'm making that statement.
Exactly.
Ma'am?
I said exactly.
Okay. Now, take that home and work with your wife. See what you think. Okay. All righty. Let's go to the second passage. The second passage. We're in Matthew chapter 10. We're thinking about the ways Jesus himself used the word disciple. A disciple is not above his teacher. A disciple listens to the instruction of his teacher. Now we turn to Matthew chapter 10, verse 25. Matthew 10, verse 25. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. Same words that he used in verse 24. Disciple, teacher, servant, master. Excuse me. Servant is doulos, bond servant, slave. Disciple, teacher, slave, master. You find it in verse 24, now verse 25. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the slave servant like his master. In verse 25, as Jesus used the word disciple, a disciple is someone who looks like Jesus. He's the teacher. How many times do you read in Matthew and Mark and Luke, Jesus described as the teacher? Or if you're reading books that are more flavored toward the Jewish reader, it's not the teacher, but it's an R word, rabbi. Or if it was a rabbi to whom or for whom the person felt a strong affinity, it would be another R word, what? Rabboni, my teacher. Rabboni, my great one. Rabbi, great one, rabbi, teacher. Remember what Martha said to Mary after Lazarus had died and Jesus came? Martha went to Mary and she said, the teacher has come. Jesus is the teacher. It's enough for the disciple to be like his teacher. Hey, Dave, look at the first part of that verse. It is enough. It's enough. As far as the disciple is concerned, the disciple says, this is all I need. All I need in life is I just want to be like Jesus. It's enough for me. I don't care what kind of car I drive. Maybe a good one, may not. Don't matter. All that's important to me is I just want to look like Jesus. I may live in a shack, or I may live in a mansion, but as far as I'm concerned, it don't matter. All I want in life is I just want to look like Jesus. I want other people to see the heart of Jesus in me. It is enough for the disciple to like the teacher, his teacher. Do you see what we need to be teaching people? It's just not what we're teaching. That's what's so frustrating about this. We knock on doors and we want to teach people how to become members of the church by being baptized. Am I right? Am I right? The church is important. Don't minimize that. Baptism is essential. Don't minimize that. But that's not what Jesus told us to do. He told us to make disciples. What do you mean? You go teach people to be someone who listens to me. And you go teach people to be someone who looks like me. And so we raise our young people in our Bible classes, and we teach them to memorize the plan of salvation. We teach them to memorize verses that can substantiate the plan of salvation. We teach them how to worship properly and what improper worship is. We send them out the back door, they go to college, and you never hear from them again. You know why? You're teaching the wrong thing. You're teaching the wrong thing. Teach the plan of salvation to the children. Teach us what that Bible verse is substantiated, of course. Emphasize proper worship versus improper. Amen and hallelujah. But we're teaching people to listen, how to listen to Jesus, apply his teachings, and therefore look like Jesus. Do you know why men commit adultery? Men in the church? Do you know why women in the church commit adultery? They haven't been taught to look like Jesus. Do you know why we struggle with giving? Because we haven't been teaching our people to look like Jesus. What did he have? What did he have? Pardon? Place to live in. Yeah, robe was given to him, by the way. I'm not saying to live a pauper's life, but I'm saying our whole set of priorities change when we say it is enough for me to look like Jesus. That's what he meant when he said disciple. Pause for a moment. When I began to share some of this with our eldership back at Spring Meadows, in an elders meeting, I made the statement, we can't go make disciples if we aren't. And I started talking about this, and one of them made this statement. He said, that is transformational. He said, that will transform us. I know. It changed me. And every time I teach this, it changes me even more. I am to be about listening to Jesus so that I can all the more look like Jesus. There's a verse or two, and then we'll take another break. Turn with me to Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2. And in Philippians chapter 2, let's begin with verse 1. If there is any encouragement in Christ, emphasis is, and there is, any comfort from love, and there is, any koinonia, fellowship, participation in the Spirit, and there is, any affection and sympathy, and there are, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. Let me read that again. In humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. I love the American Standards translation of verse 5. Have this mind in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. In other words, Philippians 2:5, think and feel the way Jesus thought and felt. Who, though he was in the form of God, the morphe, had the essence of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, miserly held on to, like you just stole this from somebody and you weren't going to give it up, miserly held on to, grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form, morphe, the essence of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, schema, the outward form of man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Think and feel the way Jesus thought and felt. It is enough. It's enough for a disciple to be like his teacher. Well, what is our teacher like? Number one, our teacher is selfless. He did not count equality with God a thing to be miserly held. Sidebar. Sin entered the world because somebody wanted to be like God, equal to God. Remember? Here is someone who was equal to God. And he didn't hold on to it so that he could help man with sin. Is that not incredible? Number two, not only is he selfless, he is sacrificial. He emptied himself. He emptied himself. A lot of times in scholarly circles, they talk about the kenosis of Jesus, the emptied or kenotical state of Jesus. And it's just hard to wrap your mind around. How can he be God and man at the same time? Well, he emptied himself. What does that mean? The kenotical state of Jesus. It's a really challenging subject, but it teaches us he was sacrificial. Number three, he was serving. he was serving. He emptied himself by taking the essence, the form of a slave. Excuse me. A servant. Number 4, he was sharing, being born in the likeness of men. Read Hebrews 2. It tells us Jesus thought it was important to be like his brethren, to share in flesh and blood as did they. So he was born in the likeness of men. He shared humanity in humanity. And number 5, he was submissive, becoming obedient to the point of death. So this is what Jesus looks like. He is selfless. Well, I don't like singing songs like that. Well, you're not like Jesus. Why can't you, as my wife, do what I ask you to do? Well, you're not like Jesus. Honk that horn, honk that horn. Catch up with that guy that just cuts you off and look over him and give him the most sour face you could ever give. You're not like Jesus.
Besides that, these days they can get you shot.
He did the crucified. Selfless, sacrificial. What have you given up for Jesus, really? Really? I don't like the answer to that question. I don't know. He serves. He has the mindset of a servant. The Son of Man came not to be ministered to, but to what?
Serve.
Minister and give his life a ransom for many. He serves. He shares. He has shared his place in heaven with us. And he's submissive to God, making that possible. So you look at those 5, hey, they started with an S, didn't they? No, there's another 5-point sermon. That 5-point sermon puts you in the heart of Jesus. And that's what you and I are supposed to look like if we're disciples. You see, he left us an example that we should follow in his steps. 1 Peter 3, verse 21, another passage we could put here. 1 Peter 2, verse 21. So a disciple in Jesus' mind is someone who looks like him. Let's take a break for about 15 minutes, come back at 8:20, and then we will finish up with the last verse in Matthew chapter 10, where Jesus used the word disciple. Okay? We will wait. I think we'll wait for Matilda, and here we come. Thank you, Matilda. We are going now from Matthew chapter 10. In the last verse, where Jesus uses the word disciple, in this one chapter, is verse 42. Let's remind ourselves where we've been. Matthew 28, verse 19, we're given one single command: make disciples. There are 3 modal participles that carry with them the emphasis of a command attached to that imperative verb. It is necessary that we go and invest in people's lives. It is necessary that we immerse, baptize people with the one baptism of the Bible. And then we are to instruct people to observe all that the Lord hath commanded, past tense, spoken in Matthew 28. All that he had commanded about being a disciple. So we ask ourselves, what had he said about being a disciple? And there are 9 passages with some parallels that set that in front of us. This is what Jesus meant when he used the word disciple. 3 of these occasions are found in Matthew 10. 3 are found in Luke 14. 1 is found in John 8, 1 in John 13, and 1 in John 15. And so we're spending our time looking at those 9 passages to see what Jesus meant when he said disciple, because folks, that's what we're to make out of the world. But first of all, it's what we're to make out of whom? Ourselves. We'll not make disciples of the world until we first make disciples of ourselves. And so when an eldership said, why aren't we baptizing more? Look in the mirror. Look at the congregation. Are you a disciple the way Jesus used that word? Are you trying to make disciples the way Jesus used that word? That's how we stir the waters of baptism. Not by just going and teaching people to hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized, be added to the church. Now, where are they? Where are they? You invest in their lives, then you baptize them, then you teach them. This is what Jesus meant by the word disciple. This is what I'm trying to be. Why don't you try to be? Let's help each other try to be. And that's how we build the Lord's church, making disciples. We're going to see this on Sunday morning in our Bible class hour, in our worship hour. We're going to go to Acts chapter 9, which is the chapter in Acts that uses the word disciple more than any other chapter. And we're going to look at other words that are used synonymously with disciple. It is amazing to see what we are to be as disciples in Acts chapter 9. So here we are in Matthew 10, seeing disciple the way Jesus used the word. Verse 24, a disciple is not above his teacher. According to Jesus, the way he used disciple, a disciple is someone that listens to him. I'm the teacher, you're the disciple. Listen. We talked about ways we listen to Jesus from the study of the parable of the sower in Matthew 13. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 25, it is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher. A disciple says, the only thing that is important to me in life is I just want to be like Jesus. That's what's enough for me. I just want to be like Jesus. So the way he used that word, a disciple is someone who looks like Jesus. And we directed our attention to Philippians chapter 2 and saw we stepped into the heart of Jesus for verses 5 through 8. The Apostle Paul was one who practiced what he preached, and that's why he could say, for me to live is Christ, Philippians 1:21. Or it is no longer I that live, but Christ lives in me, Galatians 2, verse 20. Look like Christ. Now verse 42, let's read it. The third time Jesus used the word disciple in this chapter. Whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of cold water, because he is a disciple, truly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. Whoever gives one of these little ones, one of the marginalized of the world, the disenfranchised of the world, whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of cold water, because why? Because he's a disciple. You give a cup of water to a little one simply because you're a disciple. I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. Jesus was one who reached out to the marginalized of his day. Do you remember Luke chapter 15? It's the chapter that gives us those 3 stories. Parable of the lost sheep,
The lost coin.
the lost silver. You gotta have the rights. All have to start with the same age. and then the lost son, duh. See, this one's not already. But it's that chapter. It starts with 2 verses. Luke chapter 15. Jesus was spending some time with 2 groups of people. The tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to him to hear him. Why were they coming?
Here,
To hear him. Isn't that amazing? Not to be healed, to hear him. Message had spread. You need to listen to what this guy has to say. And the Pharisees and the scribes did what? They complained, they criticized, they grumbled. Gungusman. I like that word. You'll never say it in the rest of your life, but I just like to say it. Gungusman. It means to grumble. It means to say something as this when you mumble under your breath about somebody. You remember that old bear cartoon? Get my gun. That's grumble. That's Gungusman. The Pharisees and the scribes did that. So Jesus spent time with the tax collectors. Who were they?
Outcasts.
Beg pardon?
Outcasts.
the people.
The outcasts. Why were they the outcasts?
They did not like them because they charge more than they owe.
Right.
They were legalized extortioners.
Right.
They charged more than they were owed. They paid, they literally rented the right from Rome
Right.
to collect taxes.
Right.
Then they would give Rome their quota, and Rome gave them the right to ask for as much more as they wanted. And they would literally bleed their fellow Jews. Remember Luke 19, Zacchaeus? If I have extorted or if I've taken
From you, I'll pay back 4 times.
I'll give back 4 times. The point was, that's what tax collectors did. Eric?
Going back to that thing about cut cold water. Doing good does not have to be a grand gesture. It can be as simple as cold water. Jesus set the example. He put a towel around his waist and washed feet. It doesn't have to be a grand thing. It can be the smallest thing done with love.
It can even be a word. Just a word spoken to the right person at the right time. Yes, correct. So the tax collectors also were people that were absolutely hated by the Jews because they mistreated the Jews. Tax collectors and sinners. Now, these weren't sinners because they didn't read the Bible. If you read elsewhere in the book of Matthew, he uses the word tax collectors with another group of people. Harlots, prostitutes, women of the night, red letter folks, red light folks. Red light folks. You had these hated people, tax collectors, coming to hear Jesus. You had women of the night coming to hear Jesus. Can you imagine the biggest thief known in this town coming to your church building on Sunday morning and sitting on the 3rd row? Did you go sit by him? Can you imagine 3 women coming in, ill-clad, by the way? They come with their uniform.
Outfits. Their outfits.
You gonna call them an outfit? Are you serious? Oh, they come in their uniforms and they sit on the 2nd row. You gonna sit by them? You gonna go and talk to them? I know what you will do, you'll talk about them. But they want to come hear what Daniel had to say because they heard that preacher up there at Church of Christ, he is a wonderful man. He's so genuine and so humble and so giving of himself and has a beautiful family, a lovely wife, and he preaches Bible. And when he preaches Bible, you can just tell he loves you by the way he preaches the scriptures. And you need to go listen to this man. And there they are. They want to hear Daniel preach. You know, the way they are treated could determine the depth to which they give Daniel attention.
Exactly.
Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees bellyached about it.
And you know what he told them too.
And
You know what he told them. They criticized him for fellowshipping with tax collectors and prostitutes. And he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who
told
are
these two
sick.
stories to those two groups of people to remind them there's joy in heaven over just one like this that changes. So Jesus gave them the message of redemption. He gave these people here hope, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did. Now, if you read, just as a sidebar thought, if you read the parable of the prodigal son, the prodigal son represents the tax collectors and the sinners, the one who threw away his life.
Yeah.
Jesus is represented by the Father, the one who extended mercy. The older brother represents the Pharisees and the scribes. Now, today, you are either like the prodigal, wasting your life, or you're like Jesus, extending mercy, enjoying mercy, or you're like the older brother, a Pharisee and scribe. You're one of the three. You fit one of those camps. Which one? So Jesus was reaching out to the marginalized of his day. That's the way he lived. Now you come back to the way he used the word disciple. By the way, the book of Luke, he's a people person. It's in the book of Luke that Jesus gives attention to women who were marginalized in his day. It's in the book of Luke, he gives attention to little children. It's in the book of Luke, he gives attention to tax collectors, to the outcasts. So he's a people person in the book of Luke. He is the king of Old Testament prophecy in Matthew. He is power incarnate in Mark. He is Son of God in John. He is the Old Testament king of prophecy in Matthew, because Matthew was initially written to Jews. He is power incarnate in Mark, because Mark was initially written to Romans. Right? Makes right. He was Son of God in John, because John was written to everybody. But he's a people person in Luke, because he's presented that way by the gospel, because Luke was initially written to the marginalized, the Gentiles. So Jesus spent his life with the marginalized. Do you remember Gore versus Bush? Miami-Dade? Mercy me. That's when you first started really hearing the word disenfranchise. Right or wrong, agree or disagree. But the word, bring that up with that circumstance, and you can understand what it means. Disenfranchised, the marginalized. Jesus gave his attention to people that were not treated as important as they are. And in verse 42, he said, if you give a little one, not if you give to people, but if you give a little one, even a cup of cold water, Because you're a disciple. There's a reward for you. A disciple gives attention to those marginalized, just like Jesus. So we might say that a disciple is one who lives as Jesus lived. You do what Jesus did. So let's take the time to brainstorm and see if we can't come up with some examples of those who are marginalized in society. Give me some examples. The homeless. Ouch. Right? Keep going.
Ordinance.
Pardon? Or those who don't have, who have to scrape to exist. Yes, ma'am. Uneducated. Yes, ma'am. And that's ever growing, isn't it? The way the educational system is today. Yes, sir.
The widows.
I could not hear
The
you.
widows.
Thank you. It's not you. These don't work the way they used to work. No. I've had to listen to my wife all these years and they're worn out. And I watch it. The widows and the orphans. Don't mind me telling the same story. I buried my mama 3 weeks ago today. For 9 years, she lived in an independent living apartment by her choosing. Lovely place. She just enjoyed it so much. She had peripheral cardiovascular disease, no blood flow from the knees down. Basically, we tried to correct it surgically. So my mama died literally from the feet up. And it took her about 7 weeks to go through that process. For 6 weeks, we had to move her from her apartment because she became a hauler. And we placed her into convalescent care. She was there 6 weeks. They couldn't care for her anymore and her horrific needs. And so we were blessed to move her to in-house hospice. And they immediately placed her into comfort care. And for 7 days, she lived in total peace. And then very quietly and peacefully said goodbye and hello. To my knowledge, for the 9 years she lived in this apartment, one leader in the congregation where she lived, where she worshiped, only one came to see her twice at her request. When she was in this convalescent care, the preacher, to his credit, came in over 6 weeks to see her twice. Not one elder, not one deacon. When she was in in-house hospice, nobody came to see her. And we know because we were there 24/7 for 7 days. So when this wonderful brother mentions widows and orphans as marginalized, I understand what you mean. And that chaps me, or as we say in Middle Tennessee, that knocks my hat in the creek. And Diane and I have made a personal decision. When we get home, we already know how we're going to do it. We already made that decision. We're giving special attention to the widows of our congregation. That will not be said where we worship.
Amen.
Can it be said? where you worship? Can it be said about you? I mean, I'm speaking to myself. I need to do better, and I plan to do better. Orphans. We lost a son when he was 31. His children became part orphans, and we helped raise them for a while. We still get a lot of attention. Two of them at their desire and request. We know what children without a daddy need. Don't you? Do you give attention? You see, those are little ones who need just a cup of cold water. A disciple says, you can count on me. Okay, another marginalized. Give me an example. Homeless, poor, widows, orphans.
Sick.
The sick? Who said that? You can't say that. You already had one. No, I don't count. Don't anybody minute what he did. That doesn't different. You what? Get out of your job. Oh my word. Somebody else. Addicts. Okay. Oh man, yes. Individuals who have allowed their desires to take control of their lives. Addicts. They are bookworms. They are individuals that have been marginalized that really need attention. Drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography. Sure.
Heard something powerful in a sermon once. The members of the church in their Sunday clothes passed this bum laying on the street. They all walked past him and they all shook their heads and judged him. And time came for the sermon, and the preacher wasn't there. Well, the bum comes in and takes off his bum's clothes. It's the preacher.
Now, where I have preached, it's just the opposite. The preacher comes in and everybody calls him a bum. That's a good illustration. Addicts, yes, ma'am. Anybody needs special attention. It's individuals who are trying to put the pieces of their lives back together. Amen? Can't we help them? I know a situation right now where an individual became addicted young to pornography. And that individual made a mess of that individual's life as an adult. And the way that individual has been treated, in my estimation, as an outsider looking in, was something that was much, much different than showing him or the heart of Jesus. That's a wonderful example of marginalized. Two more.
Elderly,
Ma'am,
the elderly.
why'd you look at me when you said that?
There, yes.
Yes, the elderly.
Thinking of the three up front.
Were you? And I said, I've been looking for 2 weeks and you were spot on. Oh, we have so much fun together. But yes, the elderly. The elderly can be forgotten, can't they? They really can. We live in a youth-oriented society. I heard it said, it is a shame. Youth is so wonderful, it's a shame it has to be wasted on young people. Or age is when you have all the answers, but no one's asking you the questions. Because you are just ignored. As someone that's, you want to comment on this a bit?
Another group.
Oh, another group? Okay. Well, hold on just a minute. The sweet lady has one.
Well, I was thinking about some young ladies that husband has been unfaithful, but they're doing the best they can with the
Oh,
children.
that's single parents.
Single parent.
Yes, single parents, and especially single parents that are where they are because they've been mistreated by a spouse. Man, if anybody needs the embrace of Jesus, it's someone like that. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Those who don't know God.
Those who don't know God. That's a lot of people.
Don't have any concept of. I work in the education system at school, and I ask kids just quick casual questions. What do you worship? There's a good spot, there's big interest. Nobody worships interest. They don't know stories. The mother doesn't know the father. They don't know anybody. They don't know. They basic. I was amazed. About the basic Bible stories. It goes. They never heard of. Never heard of little stories.
Just walk out of a motel, out of the foyer of a motel where they have breakfast on Sunday morning. See who is not going to worship. I mean, I remember as a boy, we would drive by, and every now and then you see somebody that was out mowing the yard, and I think, man, they're not going to go to worship. It was an anomaly. Now you are, if you go. So these are great examples, and thank you for helping me. But these are great examples of individuals that would fit into the overall category of little ones, the marginalized by society. Now, this is the way Jesus used the word disciple. He's someone that reaches out to the marginalized, to the single mama, to the widow, to the old man, to the old women.
Golden girls.
Hmm?
Golden girls.
The golden girls. The golden girl, the silver flipper. Jesus said, this is how he used the word disciple. A disciple is someone who does what I did with people like that. Can't you see Jesus reaching out to a single mama and embracing her and giving her some attention? Can't you see Jesus spending some time sitting down and talking with the older folks when everybody else is running around with the kids? Can't you see Jesus going to hospice care and stepping into the room? I wish he could, because if Jesus came into the room of hospice care, we wouldn't ask him to lead a prayer. We'd say, could you touch? And then we would all leave there together. But can you imagine Jesus and how he would interact with those that didn't give him any attention at all? We've seen how he did. So he says a disciple is somebody that interacts with people the way I did. So do I. Do I go make disciples? He didn't say go teach them the plan of salvation and get them baptized into the church. Don't minimize the plan of salvation. And don't push away the concept and the true identity of the church. Don't do that. That's not what Jesus taught us to do. He taught us to go make disciples. And this is what he means. But this is not what we're doing. Do you see what I'm saying? This is not what we're doing. We're not going and investing in people's lives and baptizing them. Yes, hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized with the one baptism of the New Testament. That is involved. We are investing in their lives. We're not investing in their lives. We're not baptizing them with the one baptism and then instructing them to be like this. Dave, William, you better teach young people to be like this. And when they go to college, they want to come back and let you know how much they love the Lord because they loved Him when they left. This is what you teach them to be. Don't just put facts in their heads so that with rote memory they can spit it back. That's where we are. Teach them to live like Jesus. Now, this idea of living like Jesus, investing in people's lives, how about Matthew 25? Let's go to Matthew 25 and begin with verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in His glory and all the angels with Him, then when He sat on His glorious throne, throne of His glory, before Him will be gathered all the nations. He'll separate them. They'll separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goat. We've read it before. He will place the sheep on His right, goats on the left. Then the King will say to those on the right, "Come, you blessed of you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was," help me, hungry, and you gave me food. Have you? Why not? I give to the church. That's not what I asked. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. Have you? I was a stranger. You welcomed me. Have you? I was naked and you clothed me. Have you? I was sick. There you go, Russ. And you visited me. Have you? I was in prison and you came to me. Have you? I want to give you a challenge because it's a challenge that Diane and I right now are trying to address in our own lives. Try to find a parachurch organization or an organization attached to the Lord's church that feeds people. Get involved with it, soup line, whatever, or make a contribution to it. Find a congregation's work or parachurch organization that digs wells in Africa. I've learned it too just recently. There's one at Delmore Elam up in Alabama deals with, and there's one in Northport Church of Christ in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
That would
And
be
they both-
walking for water,
Ma'am,
walking for water.
walking for water, bucket by bucket, yes, sir.
Brother Train, George Train has one in Haiti.
One in Haiti as well? Okay. So you see, there are great organizations that do this very thing. Make contribution. You may never be able to go to Haiti yourself, but you can absolutely support financially those that are digging wells to give them water. How many suits do you need in your closet? How many shoes do you need, ladies? I need to start with metal now. You know how many pair of blue jeans you need to live? I speak from experience. And I love wearing one of them to go down and says, don't you need to change? What's wrong with this pair? I don't like the answer she usually gives. Do you know how many shirts you need? Why don't you take the surplus and give them away? There are a lot of people who don't. How many coats do you need in the winter? Oh, I got my red one and my black one and my black one and my brown one and I got one with fur around the collar and that. I was naked. You're going to go see Jesus and I'm talking about all 5 coats that are in your closet. Nope. You don't talk about that one that didn't have a coat and you didn't know. Listen to me. This is what Jesus means when he says disciple. And this is what we're to make of ourselves and what we're to help make others. This is what it is. So find ways you can give clothes to people. Even if you have to go out and buy brand new clothes and bring them a Goodwill. You're giving people clothes. You're clothing the naked. Do you have people that visit your congregation on Sunday mornings? Never seen them before? Introduce yourself. Ask them to go to lunch with you. Look, Dan, I just don't have enough money to do that. Take part in the church contribution. They didn't hear that. We didn't hear that. But take part in the church contribution and hold it back and use it to take strangers to lunch on Sunday. Watch your church grow. Watch it grow. Now the stranger you welcome you. When was the last time you went to the hospital? You expect Daniel to be there. Guaranteed. You're going to want the elders to be there. Guaranteed. When was the last time you went? I was in prison. In Huntington, we had a prison ministry where our ladies went to the prison in Fort Ladies. I can't say to the people that I think of it up, I'll call them Jennifer. They taught her the gospel the day she got out of jail. She was immersed in water for the remission of her sins. Tuesday, I believe it was. She went back home, sitting about 2 hours away. On Thursday morning, they found her dead, sleeping on a couch. She stepped into Jesus, became a Christian on Tuesday, and on Thursday, she was living with Jesus. Because we had a handful of women that went to prison and invested in our life. I can tell you about Jane, not her name, same prison, same ladies, went and invested in Jane's life. And Jane is now a faithful Christian sister in Christ teaching Bible classes in that congregation. Because she was in prison. And they came to her. This is what Jesus is going to talk about. Yes, he'll talk with you about using instrumental music if you do and shouldn't. Yes, he'll talk to you about having never been baptized if you haven't, and you should. Yes, he'll talk to you about you believing that Muhammad is the Messiah, and you shouldn't. He'll talk to you about those doctrinal matters. He will. He's going to talk to you about what kind of attention you gave to little ones. In fact, in this context, those that are to right will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty, give you drink? When did we see you a stranger, welcome you, naked and cold of you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did to one of
The least of these.
the what?
The least of these.
The least of these little ones. A disciple is one who reaches out to the marginalized of society, as did Jesus. That's how Jesus uses the word disciple. Someone who lives as I live. Compare that Matthew 25 passage to the passage that we read in James chapter 2, verses 15 and 16, where it talks about a faith that is dead. It says, if a brother or sister is poorly clothed, lacking in daily food, and one of you says to him, go in peace, be warmed and filled, not giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also, faith by itself, if it does not have works of philanthropy, help, is dead. Or 1 John chapter 3, verse 17. If anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? So here's where we've been. We have been challenged by Jesus, charged, given a command. Make disciples. He's told us through three modal participles how to do that. You go, invest in people's lives. You baptize, immerse them into water for the forgiveness of sins with the one Bible baptism. And then you teach them to observe everything Jesus commanded about being a disciple. Contextually, that's what Matthew 28, verse 19 means. So what does he say about being a disciple? A disciple is someone who listens to Jesus, looks like Jesus, lives as Jesus lived, according to the word is used in Matthew chapter 10. I can't go make anybody like that until I am like that. Now you see why I said we've been using all of these wonderful tools of quote evangelism quote for 50 years, and we are not any more successful than we used to be, if not less, because we're doing the wrong thing. This is what Jesus commands us to do. Brethren, this will transform us as people. Amen? This will refine the whole paradigm of a congregation and of a brotherhood if we just listen. And the right time, let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you for our Savior and the balance that He has given us. We love Him. We want to listen only to Him in the New Testament. We want to look as much like Him as we have, showing people His heart in our hearts. And we want to live as He lived, reaching out to the marginalized of our peers. That is our quest. Father, help us to teach people to be that way. And help us to more and more as individuals, as congregations, and as a great brotherhood to be more and more like this. In our Savior's name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, we'll look at Luke chapter 14 tomorrow. Luke 14, and the 3 times we find the word disciple in that chapter. Thank you for being part of our class tonight.